The massive space station hung in the void like a small moon. Its metal surface gleamed under the light of 3 distant stars. Inside, thousands of beings from across the galaxy walked through wide corridors. Some had scales, others had fur. Some floated in special suits filled with gas. A few looked almost human, but most did not. Commander Elena Vasquez walked beside her alien guide. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Space Navy. The silver insignia on her collar marked her as humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. "The main chamber is just ahead," said her guide. The creature looked like a tall bird with 4 arms and blue feathers. Its voice came through a translation device that hung around its neck. "Today's session will cover trade agreements between the Outer Rim colonies." Elena nodded. She had been on the station for 3 weeks now. Every day brought new meetings about things like shipping routes and mining rights. Earth was still new to galactic politics. Most species had been part of the Council for thousands of years. They entered a huge round room. Hundreds of seats surrounded a central platform. Each seat was designed for a different type of being. Elena found her spot in the section marked for carbon-based life forms. She sat between a rock-like creature from the granite systems and a flowing mass of tentacles that represented the deep ocean worlds. The council speaker called the session to order. The speaker was an ancient being called a Zephyrian. Its people were known as great warriors, but this one looked more like a scholar. Its silver skin showed patterns of age, and its 6 eyes moved constantly as it watched the crowd. "Before we begin today's planned discussion," the speaker said, "we have received urgent news from our long-range sensors." A hologram appeared above the central platform. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of tiny lights. Each light was a star system with intelligent life. Elena could see Earth's sun as a small yellow dot near the edge. "Our sensors have detected an approaching force," the speaker continued. "It comes from beyond our galaxy. The size of this force is significant." The hologram changed. Now it showed space outside their galaxy. A dark mass moved toward them. As the image got closer, Elena could see it was not one ship, but millions. They moved together like a swarm of insects. A voice called out from the crowd. "How many ships do our sensors count?" The speaker's face grew dark. "Current estimates suggest 12 million vessels." The room fell silent. Elena felt her heart beat faster. 12 million ships was more than the entire Galactic Council had ever built. "What do they want?" asked another voice. "Unknown. They have not responded to any communication attempts. However, we have records of similar forces from other galaxies." The speaker paused. "They consume everything. Planets, ships, space stations. They strip all matter and energy from every system they enter." Elena stood up. "How long until they reach us?" 6 standard months to reach the Outer Rim. 1 year to reach the core worlds. Panic spread through the chamber. Beings began talking loudly in dozens of languages. Some stood and pointed at the hologram. Others huddled together in fear. The rock creature next to Elena spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "The granite systems will begin immediate evacuation protocols. Our people will retreat to the far rim." Other voices joined in. The tentacle being announced that the deep ocean worlds would move their populations to emergency shelters in empty space. The bird-like guide who had brought Elena spoke for the Feathered Alliance. They would gather their fleets and flee to neighboring galaxies. One by one, every major species announced the same plan: run, hide, hope. The attackers would be satisfied with the core worlds and not chase them further. Elena listened in growing shock. These were civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Some had technology that Earth could barely understand. The Zephyrians alone had more warships than humanity had ever built. Yet all of them were planning to run away. The tentacle being touched Elena's arm with one of its smaller limbs. "What will the humans do?" it asked. Its voice sounded like bubbling water. "Your people are new to space travel. You must have evacuation plans ready." Elena looked around the chamber. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ was now focused on her. The room had gone quiet again. Even the ancient speaker waited for her answer. She thought about Earth, about her home city of New York, rebuilt after the climate wars, about her daughter who was starting university next month, about the colonies on Mars and Europa, where millions of humans now lived and worked. She thought about the human fleet. 3,000 ships, most of them small. Compared to the alien forces around her, humanity's military was tiny. Any smart person would agree that running was the only choice. Elena stood straighter. She looked directly at the speaker. Humanity will not be evacuating. Confused sounds came from around the chamber. The rock creature made a noise like falling stones. The tentacle being's appendages waved frantically. Even the ancient speaker looked surprised. "Commander Vasquez," the speaker said carefully, "perhaps you did not understand the scale of this threat. 12 million hostile vessels approach our galaxy. They have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than your own." "I understand perfectly," Elena replied. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's speakers. "You're talking about an enemy force that wants to destroy everything we've built, everything we care about, everyone we love." She looked around the room at the hundreds of alien faces. "You all have more ships than us, better technology, more experience, but you're all planning to run away and hope they don't follow you." The speaker's 6 eyes focused on her. "What would you have us do? This enemy cannot be defeated through conventional warfare." Elena felt something burning in her chest. It was the same feeling she had when bullies picked on smaller kids when she was young. The same feeling she had when pirates attacked merchant ships in the outer colonies. "We stay," she said simply. "We fight." The chamber erupted in noise. Beings shouted questions in dozens of languages. Some laughed, though not in a happy way. Others made sounds of disbelief. The rock creature leaned toward her. "Commander, your species numbers only 8 billion souls. Your fleet has 3,000 ships. How can you fight 12 million enemies?" Elena looked at the hologram still floating above them. The dark swarm moving toward everything she cared about. She thought about every human who had ever stood up to impossible odds. Every time her people had faced something bigger and stronger and refused to back down. "Maybe we can't win," she said. "Maybe we'll all die trying. But someone has to show these things that this galaxy isn't just free prey. Someone has to make them fight for every system they want to take." The speaker studied her for a long moment. "You would sacrifice your entire species for a gesture." Elena shook her head. "Not for a gesture, for a principle. Some things are worth fighting for, even when you can't win. Especially when you can't win." She sat back down as the chamber continued to buzz with shocked conversation. Her hands were steady, but her mind was already racing. Earth had 6 months to prepare for war against impossible odds. Thought it was going to be a very busy 6 months. 3 months had passed since Elena's declaration at the Galactic Council. Now she stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Defiance, watching the largest evacuation in galactic history. Through the main screen, she could see endless streams of alien ships. They moved past Earth's solar system like rivers of light. Zephyrian war fleets that could destroy planets. Kithara research vessels carrying the knowledge of 1,000,000 worlds. Merchant ships from 100 different species, all loaded with refugees. Another convoy just passed Pluto, reported Lieutenant Martinez from the sensor station. "Looks like Granite System evacuation ships. That's the 14th fleet today." Elena nodded but said nothing. She had watched this same scene for weeks now. Every major civilization in the galaxy was running away. Some had offered to take humans with them. Most just shook their heads sadly as they passed by. Admiral Chun's voice came over the comm system. All ship commanders, report to Battle Station Alpha in 1 hour. We need to go over the final defense plans. Elena left the bridge and took a shuttle to the massive space station that had been built near Earth's moon. What used to be Luna City was now the biggest military base humanity had ever created. Construction crews had been working day and night for 3 months, turning the moon into a fortress. The meeting room was crowded with human officers. Elena recognized most of them. Captain Rodriguez, who had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. Colonel Jackson, who had led Marines in the war on Titan. Major Kim, the youngest fleet commander in Earth's history. Admiral Chen looked tired. He had not slept much in the past 3 months. Gray had appeared in his black hair, and lines showed around his eyes. The latest reports from our deep space scouts, he began. The enemy fleet is now 4 months away. Our count has been confirmed at 12.3 million vessels. The smallest ships are the size of our cruisers. The largest, he paused. The largest is bigger than our moon. Captain Rodriguez raised her hand. Sir, what about the alien fleets? Any chance they'll change their minds and come back to help? Chun shook his head. The Galactic Council sent their final message yesterday. They consider this system lost. No assistance will be provided. Elena was not surprised. She had received dozens of personal messages from alien friends she had made at the Council. All of them begged her to evacuate Earth while there was still time. None of them understood why humans would choose to die. What about our preparations? Asked Colonel Jackson. Chun activated a hologram showing the solar system. Red dots marked human defensive positions. Every asteroid in the belt has been fitted with weapons or turned into a mine. Mars has been converted to a fortress world. The outer colonies have been evacuated, but we've left behind some surprises. Elena studied the display. In 3 months, humanity had turned their entire star system into a weapon. Mining equipment had been converted to make bombs. Civilian ships had been fitted with military weapons. Even old space stations had been turned into missile platforms. What's our total fleet strength? Asked Major Kim. 2,800 combat-ready vessels, Chun replied. Plus about 500 civilian ships that volunteered to fight. Elena did the math in her head. Less than 3,000 human ships against more than 12 million enemies. Any computer would call those impossible odds. There's something else, Chun continued. We've been getting some interesting reports from our alien observers. He changed the hologram to show an alien space. Stationed far from Earth, Elena recognized. It is a Cathara research outpost. Dr. Cathver is a Cathara scientist who has been studying human behavior. He's been watching our preparations and sending reports to his government. Some of his observations are unusual. The hologram showed video recordings from around Earth. Construction workers building weapons while singing old songs. Children in schools making care packages for soldiers. Elderly veterans demanding to return to active duty, even though the war had not started yet. According to Dr. Cathver, Chun said, human behavior during this crisis does not match any known psychological patterns. Most species show increased stress, fear, and desperation when facing extinction. Humans show something different. Elena watched the videos. She saw her own people, but through alien eyes. Humans were not acting like a species about to die. They were acting like a species preparing for the biggest fight of their lives. What does he think that means? Asked Captain Rodriguez. He doesn't know. His report says humans are either completely insane or operating under psychological principles that no other species understands. Elena thought about her conversation with her daughter last week. The girl had been excited, not scared. She was studying engineering and wanted to help design new weapons. When Elena asked if she was afraid, her daughter just looked confused. "Why would I be afraid? You're going to stop the bad guys, right?" Colonel Jackson leaned forward. "Sir, what about communication with the enemy? Any success making contact?" Chun's face grew dark. "No response to any signal we've sent. But we did get some information from the Galactic Council archives. These things are called Devourers. They've attacked at least 7 other galaxies. Every time, they completely strip all matter and energy from every system they enter. Any species ever fight back successfully?" asked Major Kim. "Unknown. The Council has no records of any species trying to fight. Every civilization has used the same strategy: immediate evacuation and retreat to uninhabited regions." Elena was not surprised by that either. She had read the Council archives herself. Galactic civilization was built on careful planning and logical thinking. When faced with impossible odds, logic said to run away and survive. But humans had never been completely logical. The meeting continued for 2 hours. They discussed weapon placements, supply lines, and evacuation plans for non-essential personnel. When it ended, Elena found herself walking through Luna City's residential section. She stopped at a viewing window that looked out at Earth. Her home planet looked beautiful from here. Blue oceans, white clouds, the lights of cities on the night side. 8 billion people lived down there. Most of them knew they might die in the next few months, but Elena had not heard any demands for surrender. She had not seen any riots or panic. Instead, Earth's factories were working overtime to build weapons. Volunteers were lining up to join the military faster than they could be processed. Her personal communicator beeped. An incoming message from Dr. Kethver himself. Elena was surprised. She had never met the alien scientist personally. "Commander Vasquez," the translated voice said, "I hope you will forgive this direct communication. I am Dr. Kethver of the Cathara Research Institute. I have been studying your species' response to the current crisis." Elena activated the reply function. "Dr. Kethver, I've heard about your work. What can I do for you? I must ask you a question. My psychological models cannot explain human behavior. You face certain extinction, yet your species shows no signs of normal fear responses. Instead, you show increased cooperation, creativity, and what can only be described as excitement. How is this possible?" Elena smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in weeks. "Doctor, I think you're asking the wrong question." "What do you mean?" "You're asking how we can be excited about a fight we can't win. But that's not how we see it. Then how do you see it?" Elena looked out at Earth again. At the planet that had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, wars, plagues, and a dozen other disasters that should have killed her species. "We're not excited about dying, Doctor. We're excited about making sure these things know they've been in a fight. We're excited about proving that some species don't just roll over when bullies show up." There was a long pause before Dr. Kethver replied. "Commander, I believe your species may be genuinely insane." Elena laughed. It felt good to laugh. "Doctor, you might be right. But sometimes insane is exactly what the universe needs." After the call ended, Elena stayed at the window for a while longer. In 4 months, the largest military force in galactic history would arrive at Earth. Logic said humanity would be destroyed in the first hour of battle, but Elena had a feeling that logic was about to get a very unpleasant surprise. The first Devour ships entered human space on a Tuesday morning. Elena stood in the command center on Battle Station Alpha, watching the displays that showed the enemy's approach. The Devourers had split their massive fleet into smaller groups. The first wave contained only 50,000 ships, but each one was the size of a human city. Enemy vanguard has reached Proxima Station, reported Lieutenant Martinez. The station is sending its final transmission now. On the main screen, Captain Torres appeared. Behind him, Elena could see the crew of Proxima Station working frantically at their stations. The small outpost was humanity's farthest settlement from Earth, home to only 300 people. Battle Station Alpha, this is Proxima Station, Torres said. His voice was calm, but Elena could see the fear in his eyes. Enemy fleet is beginning attack run. We are implementing Protocol 7. Elena's throat felt tight. Protocol 7 was the last resort plan. If a position could not be held, its defenders would make sure the enemy paid the highest possible price for taking it. Confirmed, Proxima Station. You are authorized for Protocol 7. Earth will remember. Torres nodded. Tell my wife I love her. Proxima Station out. The screen went dark. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the sensors showed a massive explosion where Proxima Station had been. Captain Torres had detonated the station's fusion reactors just as the Devourer ships got close. Sensor readings show 12 enemy vessels destroyed, Martinez reported. 43 more showing damage. Elena felt a strange mix of sadness and pride. 300 humans had just died, but they had taken their enemies with them. It was not a victory, but it was proof that the Devourers could be hurt. Over the next 6 weeks, the pattern repeated throughout the outer colonies. The enemy expected to find defenseless settlements ready for harvest. Instead, they found traps, ambush, and defenders who refused to surrender. At Titan Station, miners used their knowledge of the moon's methane storms to hide attack ships in the thick atmosphere. When Devourer forces landed, they found themselves fighting in an environment that humans knew better than anyone. The station fell after 3 days, but not before destroying 200 enemy ships. In the asteroid belt, Captain Rodriguez led a group of retrofitted cargo vessels against the Devourer harvesting fleet. Her ships had been loaded with every piece of mining explosive the belt colonies could spare. When the explosions cleared, the entire enemy squadron was gone. The news reached the fleeing alien fleets quickly. For the first time in galactic history, someone was successfully fighting the Devourers. The messages from alien observers grew more urgent and confused. Dr. Kethfer sent daily reports to Elena. Each one sounded more amazed than the last. Commander, his latest message said, my government cannot believe what we are observing. Your species is inflicting actual casualties on an enemy that has never suffered losses before. How are you achieving this? Elena was too busy to reply immediately. The main Devourer force had finally entered the inner solar system, and the real battle was about to begin. Admiral Chun called an emergency meeting. The command staff gathered in the war room beneath Luna City. The mood was different now. After weeks of successful ambush, humanity had proven they could hurt their enemies. The bad news, Chun began, is that we've lost all the outer colonies. The good news is that we've destroyed over 3,000 enemy ships in the process. Elena felt a grim satisfaction. 3,000 ships was barely a fraction of the enemy fleet, but it was 3,000 more than any other species had ever killed. What's the current situation? Asked Captain Rodriguez. She had made it back from the asteroid belt with only half her ships, but she was already planning the next attack. Chun activated the tactical display. 11.7 million enemy ships are now approaching Mars. Our deep space scouts report they're moving in a standard harvesting formation. They expect Mars to be an easy target. Colonel Jackson smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. They're going to be very disappointed. Mars had been turned into the largest fortress in human history. The entire planet was covered in weapon emplacements, shield generators, and underground bunkers. 500,000 Marines were dug in and waiting. The enemy will reach Mars in 72 hours, Chun continued. After that, they'll move on Earth. This is where we make our stand." Elena studied the display. The Devourer fleet was spread across space like a dark cloud. Even with all their victories, humanity was still outnumbered 4,000 to 1. "Sir," she said, "what about the alien observers? Any chance they might change their minds and help?" Chun shook his head. "Dr. Kethver's people are impressed by our success, but they still consider the situation hopeless. No alien government will risk their evacuated populations." Elena understood. Logic still said humanity was doomed. A few thousand victories could not change mathematics, but mathematics had never met human stubbornness before. The battle for Mars began 3 days later. Elena watched from the bridge of the Defiance as millions of Devourer ships approached the red planet. The enemy had learned from their earlier losses. They came in tight formations with heavy shields, but humans had learned too. "All Mars defense platforms, this is Admiral Chun. You are cleared to engage." The planet lit up like a star. Thousands of hidden weapons fired at once. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and nuclear missiles filled space with destruction. The first wave of Devourer ships ran straight into the heaviest defensive fire in human history. Elena watched enemy vessels explode by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Mars's surface was covered with so many weapons that the attack looked like a solid wall of fire, but there were too many enemies. The Devourers kept coming, absorbing losses that would have broken any normal fleet. Slowly, inevitably, they began to break through. "Mars' orbital defenses are being overwhelmed," reported Martinez. "Enemy landing forces are reaching the surface." On the tactical display, Elena could see the battle spreading across Mars. Red dots marked human defensive positions. Blue dots showed Devourer landing sites. More blue dots appeared every minute. Colonel Jackson's voice came over the comm. "All Mars ground forces, remember your training. Make them pay for every meter." Jackson out. The battle raged for 6 days. Elena received constant reports from the surface. Marines fighting in the ancient lava tubes under Olympus Mons. Tank crews using dust storms for cover as they attacked enemy harvesters. Civilian volunteers operating weapon emplacements until the positions were overrun. By the end, Mars was lost. But the cost to the Devourers had been enormous. Intelligence reports estimated 20,000 enemy ships destroyed, with at least that many more damaged. "The surviving Mars forces are evacuating to Earth," Chen reported during the final briefing. "We lost 300,000 people, but we proved something important." "What's that, sir?" asked Major Kim. "These things can be beaten. They're not invincible. They're just very, very numerous." Elena looked around the room at her fellow officers. They were tired, scared, and facing odds that had only gotten worse. But none of them looked defeated. If anything, they looked more determined than ever. "What's our next move?" she asked. Chun smiled. It was the same grim smile Elena had seen on human faces for weeks now. "We do what humans have always done when faced with bullies. We hit them back harder than they hit us." The tactical display changed to show Earth and its moon. The planet was surrounded by defensive positions that made Mars look simple. Every human ship, weapon, and soldier was concentrated in one final defensive line. "The enemy will be here in 5 days, Chun said. "When they arrive, they're going to find out what happens when you threaten humanity's home." Elena looked out the window at Earth. 8 billion people lived down there. They were counting on 3,000 ships to protect them from 12 million enemies. Any sane species would surrender. But as Dr. Kethver had pointed out, humans might not be entirely sane. The siege of Earth began with the arrival of something that defied comprehension. Elena stood on the observation deck of Battle Station Alpha, staring at the massive object that had just emerged from hyperspace. It was larger than Earth's moon, covered in dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Smaller ships surrounded it like insects around a hive. "Admiral Chun to all fleet commanders," came the voice over the comms. "We've just identified the Devourer command ship. Intelligence estimates it contains the central mind that controls their entire fleet." Elena activated her personal display to get a better look at the monster. The thing was not just a ship. It was a mobile world, bristling with weapons and covered in docking bays. Thousands of smaller vessels flew in and out of its surface like blood cells through arteries. "All stations report ready for battle," she said into her headset. "Earth Defense Ship Defiance is standing by." The next few hours would determine whether humanity survived or joined the long list of species that had been consumed by the Devourers. The enemy attack began slowly. Devourer scout ships approached Earth's defensive perimeter, testing for weak points. They found none. Every approach vector was covered by overlapping fields of fire. The asteroid belt had been turned into a minefield. The space between Earth and Mars was filled with hidden weapons platforms dot, but the Devourers had numbers that made strategy almost meaningless. "Enemy main force is moving," reported Lieutenant Martinez. "Estimated strength, 11.4 million vessels approaching on all vectors." Elena watched the tactical display fill with red dots. So many enemy ships that they looked like a solid red wall moving toward Earth. No human computer could track them all individually. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun. Today we find out what humans are really made of. All vessels are free to engage." The battle erupted across the entire solar system at once. Elena's ship was assigned to the Luna Defense Sector. She watched Captain Rodriguez lead her squadron against a Devourer assault group near the moon's north pole. The enemy ships were the size of skyscrapers, their weapons carving chunks out of Luna's surface. "Rodriguez to all ships," came the transmission. "Remember, we're not trying to win pretty. We just need to make them bleed." Rodriguez's squadron dove straight into the enemy formation. Elena held her breath as human ships, tiny compared to their opponents, fired everything they had at point-blank range. 3 Devourer vessels exploded in brilliant flashes, but there were always more. The pattern repeated throughout the solar system. Human forces would destroy dozens of enemy ships, then be overwhelmed by hundreds more. Slowly but steadily, the Devourer forces pushed through Earth's defenses. After 12 hours of fighting, Admiral Chun's voice came over the emergency channel. "Well, all remaining ships fall back to Earth orbital defense. We're implementing final protocol." Elena knew what that meant. Humanity's last stand would be fought in the space around their home planet. The Defiance joined the retreat toward Earth. Only 800 human ships remained combat-ready. They formed a defensive sphere around the planet. With every weapon aimed outward below them, Earth's cities lit up with their own defensive fire. Every major population center had been equipped with surface-to-space weapons. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai. They all added their firepower to humanity's last desperate defense. The Devourer fleet followed, like a dark tide washing over everything humans had built. Elena could see the enormous command ship at the center of the enemy formation, coordinating the attack with mechanical precision. "Enemy forces are beginning planetary bombardment," Martinez reported. "Devourer landing craft are approaching Earth's atmosphere." Elena looked down at her home planet. Explosions bloomed across the continents as enemy weapons struck the surface. But the cities kept fighting back. Humans on the ground were refusing to surrender, even as their world burned around them. Then something strange began to happen. "Admiral," came a transmission from Colonel Jackson, who was commanding ground forces in North America. "We're seeing unusual behavior from Devourer units here. Some of them are hesitating." Elena frowned. "Hesitating how?" "They had a clear shot at our position, but they pulled back. Then they tried a different approach. It's like they're not sure what to do." Similar reports came in from around the globe. Devour forces that should have swept aside human resistance were instead pausing, regrouping, trying new tactics. The mechanical precision that had destroyed 1,000 civilizations was starting to break. Down. Dr. Kethfer's voice suddenly filled the comm system. The alien scientist was broadcasting from his observation post outside the solar system. All human forces, this is Dr. Kethfer. You must understand what you are achieving. The Devourer fleet is exhibiting behavior we have never recorded before. Their standard attack patterns are failing because you refuse to follow standard victim responses. Elena barely had time to process this before alarms started sounding throughout her ship. Admiral Chun to all ships, came the emergency broadcast. The Devourer command vessel is moving toward Earth. All available forces, intercept and engage. The massive alien ship was indeed moving, its bulk blotting out stars as it approached. Elena could see weapons charging along its surface, weapons large enough to crack planets. All ships converge on the command vessel, Elena ordered. Whatever that thing is planning, we don't let it happen. The remaining human fleet moved as one toward the alien dreadnought. Elena knew it was a suicide mission. Her 300-meter ship was approaching something the size of a small moon. But as they got closer, she noticed something that made no sense. The Devourer command ship was firing randomly. Its weapons, which should have been sweeping away human ships with mechanical efficiency, were missing targets. Some shots went wide by thousands of kilometers. Others hit empty space. What's wrong with their targeting? Asked Lieutenant Martinez. Elena stared at the tactical display. The patterns were all wrong. The Devourers had lost their perfect coordination. Their fleet was starting to spread out randomly, instead of maintaining formation. Dr. Kethfer's voice came over the comm again. And this time, he sounded amazed. Commander Vasquez, do you understand what your species has done? The Devourer fleet operates as a collective mind. Every action is calculated based on predicted responses from their prey. But humans are not responding according to any known pattern. Elena thought about the past months of fighting. Every time the Devourers expected humans to run, they had attacked instead. Every time logic said to surrender, humans had fought harder. You have introduced chaos into a system that cannot process chaos, Dr. Kethfer continued. The Devourer mind is trying to calculate responses to behaviors it has never encountered before. The computational load is creating system errors throughout their fleet. Elena watched as more Devourer ships began to malfunction. Some stopped moving entirely. Others fired on their own vessels. The perfect alien war machine was starting to tear itself apart, but the command ship was still approaching Earth. All ships, final attack run, Admiral Chine ordered. Target that command vessel. Everything we have left. Elena's ship joined the desperate charge toward the alien dreadnought. Human vessels, battered and outnumbered, threw themselves at an enemy that dwarfed them completely. The command ship's weapons fired, but most of the shots went wild. Elena realized the alien mind was so busy trying to understand human behavior that it could not coordinate a proper defense. Fire everything, she ordered. The Defiance unleashed every weapon it had at the command ship's surface. Dozens of other human vessels did the same. The alien hull, designed to resist planetary bombardments, began to show damage under the concentrated fire. But Elena knew they did not have enough ships left to destroy. Something so massive then she heard a sound she had not expected to hear again, the roar of reinforcement. Engines. This is Admiral Crixtel of the Zephyrian Third Fleet, came a new voice over the comm. Human vessels, we are here to assist. Elena looked at her sensors in disbelief. Alien ships were appearing throughout the solar system. Not just Zephyrian vessels, but Kithara research ships, granite system heavy cruisers, even the tentacle beings' organic vessels. Dr. Kethver, to all forces, came the scientist's excited voice. The retreating fleets received our data on Devourer malfunctions. Every species is returning to join the fight. The enemy can be defeated. The tide of battle turned in minutes. Alien fleets that had fled in terror were now attacking with everything they had. The Devourer forces, already confused by human behavior, could not adapt to this massive change in circumstances. Elena watched as the enemy command ship, overwhelmed by fire from 1,000 different sources, began to lose structural integrity. Massive explosions rippled across its surface. "Command vessel is breaking apart," reported Martinez. "Enemy fleet cohesion is collapsing across all sectors." Indeed, the Devourer ships throughout the solar system were now acting like individual vessels instead of a coordinated swarm. Some continued fighting, but many others simply stopped moving. A few even began retreating toward empty space. Elena realized what had happened. By refusing to act like prey, humanity had broken the predator. The Devourer's perfect system had encountered something it could not understand, and that paradox had destroyed their unity. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Elena stood in the rebuilt chambers of the Galactic Council. The space station had been repaired and expanded, with new sections added to accommodate the growing number of species who wanted to join. But the biggest change was not in the architecture. It was in the beings who filled the chamber. Elena looked around at faces she recognized. Admiral Crixtal of the Zephyrians sat in the warriors section, his silver skin bearing new scars from the battle. Dr. Kethver occupied a place of honor among the Cathara delegation, his research into human psychology having made him famous throughout the galaxy. The tentacle being who had once sat next to Elena was there too, along with the rock-like creature from the granite systems. But now they looked at her differently. There was respect in their alien eyes, and something else: curiosity. The council speaker called for attention. The ancient being looked older since the war, but there was new energy in its movements. "Today, we gather to formally recognize the events of the past year," the speaker announced. "The threat that we believed would destroy our galaxy has been eliminated. The species we expected to become extinct has instead shown us all a new way to face the impossible." Elena felt uncomfortable with the praise. Humanity had not fought alone in the final battle. When the alien fleets returned to help, they had brought firepower that dwarfed anything humans could manage. But she understood why the aliens saw things differently. Dr. Kethver stood to address the chamber. "My research into human behavior has been completed," he announced. "The final report has been distributed to all member species. The conclusions are significant." Elena had read the report. It was 300 pages of analysis explaining why humans had chosen to fight, when every logical calculation said they should run. The doctor had interviewed thousands of humans, from fleet admirals to civilian volunteers. His conclusion was simple: humans operated under a different set of rules than every other known species. "Other species make decisions based on probability of success," Dr. Kethver continued. "Humans make decisions based on what they believe is right, regardless of probability. This psychological pattern is unprecedented in galactic civilization." Admiral Crixtal stood next. "The Zephyrian Empire wishes to formally apologize to humanity for our cowardice during the initial crisis. We call ourselves warriors, yet we fled while these young humans chose to stand and fight." Elena shook her head. "Admiral, you came back when it mattered. That's what counts." But Crixtal was not finished. "Commander Vasquez, your species taught us something we had forgotten. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from winning, but from refusing to surrender." The rock creature made a sound like grinding stone. Elena had learned this was how the granite people showed agreement. The mathematical models all showed human defeat as certain. Yet humans achieve victory by ignoring mathematics entirely. Elena smiled. We didn't ignore math. We just figured that math had never met human stubbornness before. Laughter filled the chamber. It was a sound that had been rare in galactic politics before humans arrived. Most alien species took council meetings very seriously. The speaker called for formal presentations. One by one, species representatives stood to describe how the war had changed their civilizations. The Kitara had established new research institutes to study impossible probability scenarios. The Zephyrians were retraining their military forces to include human tactical concepts. Even the peaceful trading species had begun developing defensive capabilities they had never thought they would need. But the biggest change was philosophical. For millions of years, the speaker explained, galactic civilization has been built on careful calculation and logical decision-making. We avoided risks that could not be quantified. We retreated from challenges that could not be solved with certainty. Elena nodded. She had observed this during her time at the council. Alien species spent decades analyzing problems that humans would tackle immediately. The human example has shown us that some challenges require a different approach. The speaker continued. Sometimes logic must be supplemented with what humans call courage. Sometimes the impossible is achieved by those who refuse to accept that it is impossible. Dr. Kethfer activated a holographic display. We have confirmed that Devour fleets have withdrawn from 17 other galaxies in the past 6 months. Word of their defeat here has spread throughout the known universe. For the first time in recorded history, the Devourers are afraid. Elena felt a chill at that. The idea that creatures who had consumed entire galaxies were now afraid of something was both satisfying and terrifying. What does this mean for the future? Asked a delegate from the far rim territories. The speaker considered the question carefully. It means the galaxy has changed. We are no longer alone with our careful calculations and logical retreats. We now have allies who will stand and fight when others run away. Elena was asked to address the chamber. She walked to the central platform where she had made her declaration almost a year ago. The same platform where she had announced humanity's refusal to evacuate. Honored delegates, she began. I want to thank you all for returning to help us in the final battle. Without your fleets, Earth would have fallen. But the aliens were shaking their heads. Admiral Crystal spoke up. Commander, you mistake the order of events. We did not save you. You saved us. You showed us that running away forever is not a strategy. It is just a slower form of defeat. Elena looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces. What humanity did was not special. We just refused to give up. Any of your species could have made the same choice. Dr. Kethfer made a sound that Elena had learned was Kithara laughter. Commander, that is precisely what makes it special. You made a choice that no other species would have made. You chose hope over logic, courage over calculation, principle over probability. The tentacle being raised several appendages. The question now is what we do with this lesson. How does the galaxy move forward? Elena had been thinking about that for months. We do what we've always done. We work together to build something better than what we had before. But next time something threatens us, we remember that sometimes the smart choice isn't the right choice. The speaker called for a formal vote on the new Galactic Defense Treaty. It was a document that would have been impossible before the war. Instead of purely defensive alliances based on mutual benefit, it committed every member species to stand together against threats to galactic civilization. The vote was unanimous. As the session ended, Elena found herself surrounded by alien delegates who wanted to talk. Many had questions about human culture, human psychology, human military tactics. Others simply wanted to express their gratitude. Dr. Kethfer approached last. "Commander, I have a personal question, if you will permit it." "Of course, Doctor." "In all my research, I could not find a complete answer to one question. When you made your declaration to stand and fight, what were you feeling?" Elena thought about that day, about watching every major species in the galaxy choose to run away while her people chose to stay. "I was terrified," she said honestly. "I knew we would probably all die. I knew the odds were impossible. Then why did you choose to fight?" Elena looked out through the chamber's viewing window at Earth, visible in the distance. Her home planet showed scars from the battle, but it was healing. Cities were being rebuilt. Children were going back to school. Life was continuing. "Because someone had to," she said simply. "Because some things are worth fighting for even when you can't win. Because sometimes you discover that impossible just means nobody has tried hard enough yet." Dr. Kethfer made notes on his personal device. "And do you believe other species will learn this lesson?" Elena smiled. "Doctor, 6 months ago, you would never have asked me that question. 6 months ago, your people would have calculated the risks and decided it was safer not to know. Now you're asking because you want to understand something that can't be calculated." She gestured around the chamber where aliens and humans were, working together on plans for the future. "I think the galaxy is already learning." As Elena left the council station to return to Earth, she reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had faced extinction and chosen to fight instead. In doing so, they had not just saved themselves. They had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. The universe was a dangerous place, full of threats that could not always be calculated or avoided. But now the galaxy had learned something new. Sometimes the best response to impossible odds was not to run away, but to stand up and prove that the impossible was just another challenge waiting to be overcome. And if more threats came in the future, as they inevitably would, the galaxy would be ready. Not with perfect plans or calculated strategies, but with something more powerful, the knowledge that some fights were worth having, regardless of the odds. Elena looked back at the space station growing smaller behind her ship. Inside, hundreds of species were learning to be brave in a way they had never been before. It was, she thought, a good start.